Actually, I sleep here under this table.
Greetings, all you high-vibration, earth-dwelling humanoids, those in search of truth, virtue, and the better world of our collective imagination. May this invisible wave formation of ones and zeros reach your brain and find you well amidst the tumult of a world that can feel at times out of control. May it bring you comfort, especially to those that are lonely out there, and grace to those in need of it. My name is Rich Roll, here again in physical parallel, in neurological simpatico, and verbal symbiosis with my endearing and sagacious confederate on all things roll on, the honorable and high-principled, snorkel mask adorning baron of the literary manor himself, my liege, my lord, the humble nobleman himself, Mr. Adam Skolnick. A lot of pressure on these intros after the response last time, so I had humbled. To double down.
I kneel before you, sir.
Yes.
How may I be of service?
No, I am in service to you today, my friend.
All right.
For those new, Roll-On is typically our opportunity to shift focus away from our traditional fare of evergreen conversations to instead hone in on matters of more contemporaneous, time-sensitive interest. Today we do just that, but we're going to do it with a twist. After a little bit of housekeeping and typical opening shenanigans, we're going to spend the gravamen of this episode grappling with recent events in Afghanistan, less from a political perspective and more from a human rights perspective, with a specific focus on the very grave plight faced by the 16+ million women in Afghanistan in the wake of the United States departure and the grip of Taliban rule. It's a conversation and exploration that is aided, soon to be aided, by two special guests today, Doctors Ayesha and Dean Ayesha. You know the Ayeshas as the neurology duo, the experts on brain health, Alzheimer's, and neurodegenerative disease. They've twice graced this show in the past, but what you might not know or remember is that they both have considerable experience with Afghanistan, having lived and worked there for 3 years, I believe, beginning back in around 2003, a period in which Dean was actually appointed by President Karzai as the Deputy Minister of Health. And together, they created the most successful post-conflict healthcare system with women's empowerment at its core. Lots to come on that. It's proving to be a fascinating conversation. But before Team Ayesha joins us, Adam, how goes you?
I am grateful. I am.
Are you ordering food at Cafe Gratitude?
No, but I feel...
That's what they say. You don't just order the menu item. You have to say, I am. And the foods are grateful.
I am honored.
Compassionate.
I am perturbed.
Joyous.
If I was the manager at Cafe Gratitude, which I applied for that, by the way.
You did.
I didn't get it.
That's why you ended up at Ben & Jerry's.
So I'm at Cinnabon now.
Okay. Off from Ben & Jerry's?
Yeah. Ben & Jerry's, because you guys, I didn't work there. I never worked there. So I applied to Gratitude and Cinnabon. But Gratitude, I think I would add an I am perturbed item.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know what it would be, but it'd be there'd be lots of garlic and onion.
Yeah. Some like Jewish guilt, invective put into the menu.
A dill pickle.
Right.
I'm grateful because, first of all, the scheduling. Thank you to allowing me to be here with the Ayesha.
Yeah, so we're recording this a week early because you're going to be up swimming Alcatraz.
That's it. And also grateful we're dispensing with first world problems here to talk about like some real life and death issues in Afghanistan. So, that makes me feel grateful. That's one of the reasons I've always been attracted to kind of human rights reporting in general, because it does give you, as someone engaging in that space, like the gravity to see the world in kind of the way it really is, and to be grateful for what you have.
Sure.
And so there's kind of that element of it there. Except I did have one first world problem to ask you. What's the vegan way of getting rid of a spider that has taken up residence in your rearview mirror?
Well, leave him be.
Let him live there?
Yeah, is he bothering you?
Well,
or consciously relocate him?
Are we sure it's him?
Maybe not. Her.
Yeah.
Him, her.
I don't know. So no water in there just to like, because every morning there's this huge like messy web. It's not like Charlotte. I'm not getting like a message in the morning. It's this mass of like stringy web that I knock down, and then every morning it's there again. And today on the drive here, it blew out because of on the freeway, but it'll be there.
Well, you're dealing with the symptom and not the cause. Like if you're just destroying the web but not finding the spider and appropriately relocating him to a habitable environment, I don't know.
All right. Well, let's do a pod on that one time.
Yeah, that deserves a full hour.
We need a full hour on this. I once had rats living under the hood of my car, so something about my car is like is a ecosystem. Yes, the Subaru ecosystem.
All right. Well, keep us posted. Next week there'll be an update, I'm sure.
How are you, man?
I'm good. I've been back in the pool. I'm feeling grateful myself to be wet again after quite a respite. So that's been really nice. And it's actually helping my sleep, and I'm seeing the gains pretty quickly. So I'm happy about that. I'm rocking new glasses.
Great looking glasses.
Yeah. Roca sent me, they have a fall line. They sent me like 3 pairs of glasses with my prescription in them. So I'll rotate those through. But
got a haircut?
Did get a little bit of a haircut.
Looks good.
Yeah, everything's good.
I love seeing the swim flop. I think I speak for everyone out there. When the flop comes down, then you throw what you've been doing out there.
I dropped the kickboard with all my gear on the deck.
Yeah.
It makes a loud thwap.
Yes.
On Instagram stories every time I do a swim. People seem to enjoy that.
And the swims are impressive, man. You're doing 5K in like an hour 10.
That's all relative. Trust me. I have a long way to go to get back to form, but I'm excited to be back in it. And yeah, people love the flap. And then I love it when people tag me, they do their own version of that. And then I always reply with a grade.
Oh, is that?
Because there's a very specific way to do it correctly. Okay. Most people fall short of that. So do your thwap, tag me, I'll grade it.
I'm going to start thwapping at the beach.
Yeah, well, that would require you going to a swimming pool and not the ocean.
Can't I thwap on the sand?
It's not the same.
There's no thwap.
The same thing.
It's just
I have to take you to the pool, and I have to evaluate your technique.
It's not going to be pretty.
My spidey sense from the spider in your rearview mirror is telling me that maybe you need a tutorial.
I definitely do.
Yeah.
But you said you were going to swear off cycling, and you did this massive ride yesterday too.
I didn't say I said I need to take a break from running, and I need to be judicious about my cycling.
Okay.
So I've dialed the cycling back, but I'm going to ride like 1 or 2 times a week and really focus on the swimming.
Seems like that was a monster
right
too.
Now. So it's actually already, and I'm doing some strength training. So I'm really dedicated to like resolving this back issue. That's my commitment right now.
Right on.
I do want to report back on something that was a bit controversial last time we spoke, which is the appropriate definition of quote unquote bi-weekly. We had a bit of a kerfuffle last time around what that actually means. Some confusion. I'm proud to announce that my instinct was correct, Adam. Per Merriam-Webster, biweekly is defined as something that occurs every 2 weeks or twice per week.
That's confusing,
How
Merriam.
is that possible?
Because even Merriam doesn't know what it means.
Right.
Yeah.
It means both or either.
Yes.
This is sowing mass confusion.
I blame Gen Z.
Similarly, it's always been the case. Similarly, bi-monthly is defined as something that occurs every other month or every other month or twice a month.
This is not
good. So if you say we're going to meet bi-monthly or we're going to meet bi-weekly.
Right. So then
how are you supposed to know what that means?
If you like join a new organization and then the organization says, okay, great to be here. We're going to be here bi-weekly. And then you don't come for 2 weeks and you've missed 3 meetings or at least 2 meetings. That's not good.
No.
You're on the outs, buddy.
So with this, henceforth, I despair over the pitfalls of the English language. I mean, come on. Words, they have one job.
One job.
And this means 2 different things. I don't know what to tell you.
Let's create a new word for it.
What's that?
For every other week?
You blanked out.
Too much pressure.
Yeah, I know. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Sorry.
This concludes that section.
I'll come up with one by the end of the episode.
One thing I want to mention real quick here to shift gears a little bit. Many of you know and love Josh LaJaunie. He's been on the podcast a number of times. His story of dropping 250 pounds, I believe, to become an ultra runner living down in southern Louisiana. It's a legendary tale. He's a beautiful human being. He's an audience favorite. And,
he was one of my favorites.
Yeah, he's an incredible guy, beautiful, lovely guy.
Yeah.
And right now he really needs our help. Josh, his family, his community has been utterly devastated by Hurricane Ida. And as some of you may remember, Josh owns and runs a trailer park. This is his vocation. And at least 20 families' homes were destroyed by the recent storm. And he's been going out of pocket, doing daily runs for gas, water, ice, food for his tenants, spending all kinds of cash on tarps that will serve as temporary roofs until repairs can begin. He's quite overwhelmed. And I just wanted to alert everybody to this fact. Our mutual friend, Howard Jacobson, who was also an early guest on the podcast, made a video. I'll link that up in the show notes. And in that video, he speaks to Josh and includes links and a QR code for people to donate. And I should say it's not a registered charity. There's no tax deductions here. It's just basically an opportunity to send a little bit of extra cash to Josh via Venmo or Cash App to help him out, his family out, and his community out. At the same time, Howard and I have been going back and forth. He's working on possibly putting together a webinar with plant-based athletes that would be free to the public, but would invite people to send money to Josh for him to orchestrate survival and rebuilding efforts for his community. I don't have any details on that yet, but as that sort of comes into fruition, I'll be sure to let you know. As I mentioned at the outset, we're recording this on September 6th, and this podcast doesn't go up until the 16th. So in the interim, perhaps this will come together, and I'll share that out on social media.
Heavy and thoughts with you, Josh.
Right. And I think that's it. Should we take a break and pivot?
Let's do it.
Anything else you want to say? How are you feeling about Alcatraz?
I feel great about Alcatraz. Did a good swim. Our friend Neil Strauss joined with Kyle Tierman, who's a friend of mine.
I know Kyle. He's been on the podcast also.
Okay, perfect. So Kyle, the veteran of Mavericks,
Big waves,
big wave surfer, podcaster. Now he's works at Mudwater. He's a writer and editor there.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And so he was out. Another friend of theirs, Chris, came. My buddy John Moore, who you've met, who swims, my swim buddy, who I'm going to do Alcatraz with, was there, and we all got in the water. It was fun. It's cool. At Will Rogers. No sharks reported.
Reported. That's the key word.
No sharks reported.
Did you have the Malibu artist in tow, though?
He was there.
To verify that?
He was there.
Oh, okay.
But I felt good. The first, it was one of those funny things. Like, I don't know if you've ever had this, but like my watch, I have the Garmin Descent, which has a free dive application. And for the first, 1,300 yards, it's working perfectly. And I was in a good pace for me. And then on my swim back, I'm waiting around for John and some others, and I couldn't find them. So I start swimming back, and then it just stays like in that same yardage for like 30 more minutes. And it didn't until I was getting out after the whole swim start ticking over. And it's only funny that like I never cared about how many yards I was swimming or the time. It never was even part of my life. But as soon as you have that watch on and you're starting to measure your workouts, it's so annoying to not get it.
Well, first of all, why do you have it on the free diving setting when you should be on the open water setting?
It's on the open water setting.
All right.
It's setting. Yeah.
Yeah, these things are not perfect.
Tech doesn't work. Tech doesn't work.
All right. Well, we're going to pivot to things that do work, or hopefully things that can be fixed. So we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with Ayesha and Dean Sherzai. Sorry to interrupt the flow. We'll be right back with more awesome, but I want to snag a moment to talk to you about the importance of nutrition. The thing is, most people I know actually already know how to eat better and aspire to incorporate more whole plants, more fruits, vegetables, seeds, beans, and legumes into their daily routine. Sadly, however, without the kitchen tools and support, very few end up sticking with it. So, because adopting a plant-based diet transformed my life so profoundly, and because I want everybody to experience some version of what I've experienced, we decided to tackle and solve this very common problem. The solution we've devised, I'm proud to say, is the Plantpower Meal Planner, our affordable, all-in-one digital platform that sets you up for nutrition excellence by providing access to thousands of highly customizable, super delicious, and easy to prepare plant-based recipes. Everything integrates with automatic grocery delivery, and you get access to our amazing team of nutrition coaches 7 days a week and many other features. To learn more and to sign up, visit meals.richroll.com. And right now, for a limited time, we're offering $10 off an annual membership when you use the promo code RRHealth at checkout. This is life-changing stuff, people, for just $1.70 a week, literally the price of a cup of coffee. Again, that's meals.richroll.com, promo code RRHealth for $10 off an annual membership. All right, let's get back to the show. And we're back. We're joined by Drs. Ayesha and Dean Ayesha, along with Mr. Adam Skolnick. Good to see you guys again. Thank you for doing this today.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, I wish it was under better circumstances, but I feel like the conversation we're about to have is an important one to help us all better understand what's happening in Afghanistan, how we got there, and perhaps some solutions for all of us to avail ourselves to participate in ameliorating the hardship that's going on there. But before we even get into any of that, I think it would be instructive for each of you to kind of recap your relationship with Afghanistan and your experience there.
Sure. So I was actually born there. My parents and my grandparents are from Afghanistan, were from Afghanistan. And when I was a medical student, I had an opportunity to go back and help out. I think all of us grew up with this idea to give back to the community. That was something that was instilled in us by our grandparents and our parents. And back in 2002, I went back there to help out. I was with Doctors Without Borders and with some other phenomenal individuals. This was the post-Taliban era. And I was very passionate about helping women and children, as was everybody else. And it was one of the most beautiful times of my life because there was a rebirth of hope, where after a very prolonged period of darkness and hopelessness, suddenly an opportunity became available for men and women, but especially for women, to find freedom, to find their voice, to educate themselves, to interact with each other, and to be really accepted as human beings in a society which shrouded them, which just deleted them from the face of this earth. And so to have been in that environment where you saw this growth, this hope, and the continuation of that hope over many, many years, and now to see this devastating effect of taking away that hope from them overnight is just catastrophic. So even though Dean and I are in the field of neurology and brain health, and we talk about everything brain health, I think it's very, very important for us to talk about something that is powerful, that not just is a calamity that has affected a particular population. I think it affects all of us as human beings because it's an overnight extinction of 16 million plus human beings on this earth. These women who were given hope, and it's worse than that, taking away that hope from them.
Yeah. Dean, I want to hear your experience as well, but Ayesha, so when you returned to Afghanistan, it was around 2003?
Yes,
So
2002.
we're talking post 9/11. It was that era of optimism and a sense of possibility where rights were being restored and everything seemed to be kind of moving in an upward positive trajectory, at least with respect to human rights.
Yes, absolutely. When people watch the news or watch clips from Afghanistan and how the West and the United States went there to help rebuild the country and provide security, they don't realize that the biggest asset was providing opportunities for women for this population that never had that opportunity, and for them to become very successful models of progress in a society. I mean, just imagine half of the society not being involved in making decisions for the country. Suddenly, all of them came into forefront. And it was this beautiful regeneration of a culture and a society where music was brought back, where art came back. And when you provide that security, creativity is born. Mm-hmm. And so we saw the manifestation of that security. The very thing that makes me so sad is that it's just not there anymore.
Yeah.
Can I ask,
Sure.
just to set the context for listeners who might not know, when the Taliban came in the mid to late 90s and ruled there, music was like you couldn't play recorded music, photographs were outlawed, certain books were outlawed, film entertainment that was outlawed, like by punishment of death, right? Is that correct?
Like recording tape would be hung from the trees as a warning.
Yeah.
So then you're saying this openness brings it all back.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You essentially, it's difficult to perceive that limited way of life where, anything that almost brings pleasure is completely negated. And so in the absence of that freedom, it's not just helping a particular set of population live a normal life. You're basically killing progress in many ways. And Dean and I actually saw this metamorphosis that was happening in the early 2000s when we were working there together. We actually met there during that time, and we got married there. We dated there. It was one of the most amazing experiences.
You were talking about what was during the Taliban in the 90s and what happened. I was there right after the 9/11, end of 2001. I was at NIH doing these wonky research in Building 10 where you put probes into the basal ganglia and all this stuff. And because of my background in management, they asked me to go back to Afghanistan to see for 3 months if you can help out. And I went back. It was supposed to be 3 months. I'm not going to give up that career. And the first day I go there, and by the way, at the time I'm living on a lake in Reston, Virginia, and I land into the airport. This is at the beginning. There's no light. There are no lights. There's no electricity. People are just, walking around almost like a zombie-esque thing. No color. The first thing I do is drive through the city, and there's no building standing in this one street. That's famous street, 3rd Street. And no building. And you see these little heads popping up, and you look around like, oh my gosh, why are they? Shouldn't they be told not to play there? Oh no, that's where they live. Mm-hmm. So it was the visceral nature was just so great. 3 months turned into 3 years, where the president asked me to stay and rebuild the healthcare system. But what I saw was, and this is critical because I think this is important for all of us as human beings. I think what the most important part of this conversation that you're bringing, and similar kind of conversation, is for people to experience the breadth of human expression, that it is that person named, Malala or something, is actually my sister, my daughter, my mother. It's the same. They're the same people. Now, in 2002, I went to the restaurants. There was no taste. Food had no taste. No color. Buildings had no color. Nothing. People would wear just gray because those are luxuries. But as soon as freedom came, nominal as it was, within 2 months, you saw color, sound, music, taste, smell, good smell. Everything just manifest. That was such an incredible mental state for me to see, oh, wow. You talk about, you let, a piece of land, give it some water, vegetation grows. You leave a piece of land, opportunity for human mind, and everything grows. Mm. So I say that life is about management of expectations, and the worst thing we could have done, and this is going to be controversial, is to create expectation in women. Because what we lost in these 20, or what we made in these 20 years, was the most important thing as human beings that we can create, which is opportunity for hope, opportunity for the brain to manifest its full potential. And we saw that incredibly, and Ayesha saw that in women that she dealt with.
Right.
I mean, I go in and I thought that I'm talented. When you bring hungry people and give them opportunity, they would blow me away as far as their talent. They would learn like multiple languages. One person actually got 2 degrees within 2 years. The women were learning. I mean, you can speak to that.
Oh my gosh, yeah. The level of motivation, that hunger for growth, for knowledge, for art, I've never seen that in my life anywhere. And I think it's because of that contrast where there was nothing and then suddenly they were given opportunity that they could do anything they wanted. And they all chose to be something significant, not just in their own lives, because they realized that in a country where you usually have a group of survivors. I mean, Afghans are mostly survivors. They've seen governments come and go. They've seen, countries come and go. Empires come and go. And so they have this sense of self-worth and self-preservation. But this new generation of women knew that it has to be beyond that. It can't just be about the self. It has to be recreation of stable grounds on which they, their children, and the next generation can live. So over the past 20 years, what we've seen is these incredible women create the infrastructure for themselves and for the next generation to grow and to be someone significant and to have a voice and to propel that voice to the world.
Which makes the removal of that hope and all of those opportunities all the more tragic, of course.
Devastating.
And I think, we can debate the pros and cons of the U.S. withdrawal and this sense of, the occupation over the last 20 years being kind of an unmitigated boondoggle and political disaster, et cetera. Certainly, we can agree that the withdrawal was bungled on a colossal scale. But help us understand the human rights implications of where we are now.
Well, I think it was just one of the most poorly planned steps ever. And, we could go into the details of that, but I think in many ways it's a disrespect to everyone who's worked there. It's a disrespect for all the troops who actually lost their lives there. I look at it from a very sexist way. I think it was a very misogynistic step. I mean, yes, there's been a lot of focus on translators and allies who help the troops do their job and protect them. But did anybody think about what was going to happen to the women? Did anybody ever consider the girls in Afghanistan? That conversation never comes up. Did they never see that if Taliban come back, that they're basically going to ask them to not exist anymore? That's exactly what's happening. Nobody ever thought about women.
Yeah, what's
they were
interesting,
never a part of the plan.
Yeah, it really wasn't. And what's interesting about this, in the context of the advisability of U.S. withdrawing or not, is the downstream implications of that withdrawal, and this idea, that the occupation was a bad idea to begin with, and it was a loser, and it was never going to, we were never going to nation build to the extent that we aspired to, and yet there were victories along the way, and the hope and the opportunities that were created for these women. And a big part of your message is like recognizing that some good was done, which begs the question of whether or not some form of sustained occupation could have, been advisable in this situation to maintain some level of stability for this type of opportunity.
Absolutely.
I would say that I agree with you. Protracted military existence in Afghanistan was not a tenable thing. I mean, not at the numbers that people spoke about. Small numbers maybe, and we have we're in over 100 countries right now, just maintaining, and we were doing well.
How long have we been in South Korea?
Oh my gosh, yeah, 50 years or more, exactly. So, the reason that Ayesha brings up the misogynistic and sexist terms is because insouciance has a connotation. Why would you be indifferent or unaware or willfully unaware of what has been done in Afghanistan, which is not a small matter. Forget about nation building. You don't go to nations to build buildings. You go to nations to build human opportunities, if that's even an option. But even if it's not, if it's a byproduct, you acknowledge it. Why is it that building of 16 million women to the degree where each of them were incredibly talented is not even being acknowledged as a victory? If nothing else, we did a good job.
Yeah.
The willful insouciance, the willful ignoring of that fact says something about us ignoring it. And then the fact that leaving that vacuum in place, forget about vacuum, it's going to be shrouded, literally. We talk about Taliban making women wear the burqas, which covers completely. Well, it's literally and figuratively that across 16 million people, where that's the death of 16 million people. Why is that not being talked about? I don't want to make this a political thing with sexist, male, but you have to kind of go to that core. Why isn't that being addressed? And that's an important question to ask, because that question comes to us here in the United States. That question will come to us in Europe. That question will come to us everywhere in the world. If we don't acknowledge the value in the language we use, we'll live the consequences in the policies we live.
It's funny because when you sent your message to Rich, that email, and then he shared it with me when you guys were getting in contact about coming back on to discuss these issues. The idea of reframing the 20 years as a triumph when everyone was talking about, I think because of the swiftness with which the Taliban took over, there's been that dialogue of failure has been the main talking point. I think that has something to do with that. But the idea of reframing it as one of the best things the United States taxpayers have ever done is very interesting. It's definitely something I haven't heard anywhere else, but besides that email and now what you're saying today. And I think that's a really powerful point, that there was some cost of doing business element. There was a corruption element. Some money went away that shouldn't have gone. But maybe that is the cost of doing business, of reclaiming lives that had been erased. And maybe it is the world's responsibility, considering Afghanistan is this country that since the Silk Road has has been part of globalization since then, right? I mean, it's hung in the balance between whether it's the Soviets and the U.S. in the 70s, or the British when they were kind of in Burma, and they were in India, and here's Afghanistan, and trying to figure it out. And even well before that, Alexander the Great and the Persian empires. Afghanistan has been this one place that has been at the core of so much foreign policy for centuries. I wonder if you could speak to that, given your knowledge of the history there, and how take us from that to where we are now historically, and why Afghanistan has been so vital.
We're not much of nationalists, so it's the borders are not as important as the people. But in this case, the borders, although they have moved, it's a unique little real estate. I wouldn't want to own land in that real estate where your neighbors are Russia, China, Pakistan, Iran, and a little further out, India. That's a bad neighborhood. And you're landlocked. And not only are you landlocked, the airplanes, where they fly out of Kabul, they have to use special flight maneuvers because it's a bowl with tall mountains.
Right.
And everywhere it's like that. So it's just mountainous land. Beautiful, though. Absolutely gorgeous. I remember the first time I went there in 2002, they took me in a Russian helicopter. And by the way, I never want to do that again, because it was old. You saw the wires coming out. I said, "Oh, don't worry, it's going to be safe. Not many people have died from this flight." And we fly over the mountains, right, just barely. This is Hindu Kush Mountains, which are some of the tallest, I think the second tallest in the world. And then we get to this place called Badakhshan, which is green valleys, little riverets running, and people are running around. And I'm like, I'm like crying like baby, like this beauty. So it's an incredible land as far as its extremes, and the people are a group of different kind of peoples, from Genghis Khan's conquests to Alexander's conquests. You see remnants of those features in Afghanistan as well as some others as well. So it's a unique population that has been forged in the crucible of the most difficult space in the planet.
And that's because of the China, Russia, India. Is that the reason? The Silk Road?
Pakistan.
Yeah. And Pakistan.
And on top of that, the environment itself, the mountainous environment. Like, for example, the Panjshir Valley just fell, which is this little space that had not fallen to the Taliban. And the reason for that is because external forces again. The Russians bombed that place, carpet bombed that place 9 times over. Still they couldn't conquer it. They couldn't conquer the place. So it's the geography is just crazy. When you go there, it's just absolutely.
Right.
For 9 miles, it takes you 4 hours because you have to go these incredible traverse. So it's the environment, the landscape, the neighbors has created these people that are survivors, caring, loving people that are unique to the region. But at the same time, it's constant war, constant calamity. I said, please, I'm just again going to be politically. I'm known for this. Sell the land, buy some space in Florida. Because it's a tough neighborhood. Yeah. It's a tough neighborhood.
Yeah.
But because of that, then the women up to now, even under Taliban, they shroud them. They're tough women. They are really resilient people.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think the withdrawal, the timing of the withdrawal, speaks to the kind of uptick that we're seeing in neo-isolationism across the world. So it's not that surprising that it occurred now. But I think the manner in which we conducted it and the mistakes that were made and the kind of implications that we're now living with really underscores the decline of the United States as a responsible superpower in so many ways. I mean, how can any allies trust us again? How can, our friends across the world, believe us when we say we're coming here to do X, Y, and Z when we pull out and create the kind of chaos and havoc that we're now seeing? And, from a boots on the ground perspective, I want to know a little bit more about your experience working there with women specifically in these initiatives that you created and kind of the legacy of those today and what's going to happen.
I actually want to highlight what Adam was referring to earlier. And this is exactly what we saw when we went back is, a lot of our friends here in the United States and around the world always refer to U.S.'s existence in Afghanistan as a big failure, but the positivity and the success that was created during these last 20 years was probably it's something that we all need to talk about and highlight, and I think it's something that we all need to be very proud of. You have a generation of women scientists, doctors, lawyers, engineers, businesswomen, politicians. We even have the robotics team. Just incredible human resource. This talent that was allowed to flourish. And these people not only represented just Afghanistan, but they represented the best part of who we are as a human race. And working with women in Afghanistan and, seeing them take advantage of this security was incredible. And, you always compare yourself. I always compared myself to some of the women who would work there. And with the speed of acclimating to change and the speed or the hunger that they had of getting themselves trained in a particular field is something I've never seen ever in my life. And it really shifted the narrative in the society. And I think one of the reasons why we saw this massive growth where women became leaders and you saw change in the society was because of the presence of U.S. and the West there that allowed them to flourish and thrive. And Dean and I were involved in creating, health empowerment programs. And, Dean actually did an amazing job in the Ministry of Health where he created the most successful health empowerment program without ever challenging the traditions and the cultural norms and the impediments that were there.
Yeah, I called it social jiu-jitsu. I'm terrible with jiu-jitsu to be, so maybe
you're good at social jiu-jitsu.
Social jiu-jitsu, which is you don't confront. long-standing traditions and edicts, right? It's impossible to challenge. So you create a pathway for the behavior to come forward, and human behavior will find its path of least resistance. It will. So one of the projects, and by the way, I've said this in the past, I'm going to retract that, which is I created that. I did not create that. I led that, or I led it from behind because these people did it themselves. I want to make sure that we don't. This leadership thing is overstated. The environment was created. I kind of created the idea, but you should see what happened. So one of the projects was where we said we're going to go to these places which were Taliban infested, and they still need healthcare because at the time in 2002, average age was 48. 1 out of 4 children were dying before the age of 5. 1 out of 6 women were dying during their pregnancy life. Given that the average woman had 7 pregnancies, you do the math.
Wow.
I mean, and they didn't just die. It's the worst death you can imagine because they start bleeding. There's no hospital within 4 horseback rides. So they're going to die of severe bleeding and pain getting to the hospital by the thousands. So that was my challenge, coming from NIH, the richest research institute in the world, where for a project for tapping, we spent like $6 million. Where here, you didn't have penicillin. So what we did was we knew that the lowest denominator of healthcare, which would save 90%, was ORS, which is oral rehydration fluid, water, salt, and sugar. Because the children that died from diarrhea, dysentery,
right.
And you can't give medicine for that. You just make sure that the water is retained. So
because
like
of no
homemade
clean
Gatorade.
water?
No clean water.
It's like a homemade Gatorade.
Right.
Homemade Gatorade.
Yeah.
So it's about water sources, and that creates the dysentery that you can't recover from if you're under 5.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Women died, and the other one's upper respiratory. 1 antibiotic, ampicillin, would save significant amount of people. And then women knowing that when they're bleeding, this is spotting as opposed to serious bleeding. So start now, and that saved thousands. So who do you need for that? Do you need doctors? No. It's useless in Afghanistan. Do you need hospitals? No. Although all the people who had money wanted to build hospitals. Why? You could show it on TV.
It's all about visibility. Right.
No, I said, spend it on these young girls, 6th grade educated young ladies who would learn the basics. So we went to the regions, Taliban leaders, and we say, we want to bring healthcare. We said, no, we don't need it. We don't need your doctors. No, your own girls. And they would only see women and children. They said, really? Okay, sure. But I knew what was going to happen. We made sure, for most part, the clinics were made in a conspicuous place so everybody could see. Because we knew what happens in 3 months. Guess who gets sick? The man, the big man. And he would go to this young girl in a prostrate position saying, can you help me? You just flipped the dynamics. That woman was now empowered. That woman became a doctor, not really, but by concept. And a lot of those women ended up in the parliament. A lot of those women ended up in positions of power.
So you're training medics.
But how do you do that?
Less than
you're
medics.
giving them like basically EMT training.
Right.
Less than EMT.
On the kind of jiu-jitsu tip, like how do you accomplish that in a Taliban-controlled area? Because any female empowerment is a visible threat to the power hierarchy.
Education is a threat, but healthcare for the women themselves, their wives and their daughters and children, is not.
For them to serve each other.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. So it was just, the women can go play around and take care of each other. Well, we knew healthcare is healthcare. It's going to. So we actually wrote a paper published in a peer-reviewed journal, How to Empower Women in Third World Countries. The title was Recalcitrant Countries, but they changed it. So Third World Countries. So nonetheless, but that wasn't us.
So healthcare just being the vehicle for empowerment. Right?
Yeah. Because it's a non-threatening. Education is threatening. Ampicillin is not. You're just giving. So, but the bigger picture here was that these women took that position and took it to the nth power, because they became leaders, they became outspoken leaders, they did more than just healthcare, and you just created the environment. And if that's not success, so either we consider success that how much wealth we draw from a country, or how much wealth, human value, human capital we leave behind. The human capital per capita, if that's a quantifiable thing, was exponential in Afghanistan, from what the base was to what we left it. And it's going to be exponential the other way around now.
Yeah. Are you in touch with any of these women that you helped empower, and what are they telling you now?
Yes, we are. We've been in touch with a lot of our previous colleagues, and in this whole chaos, we've been in touch with good people who are trying to evacuate a lot of them, and there's nothing but sadness, just profound sadness, and like we said earlier, it's this lack of hope and seeing the opportunity of existing, fleeing from them. That is just devastating. A lot of women are saying that if they ever go back to being at home and not being able to go back to work or school, which is exactly what's happening, the Taliban are telling them that they can't work anymore, that they can go to school. They can't even go out to the grocery store without a man from their own family. They accept death. They said that we would rather die than be in this situation. Yeah. A lot of them are rebelling. They're saying that, we're not the same women that we were. Now we live in the 21st century. We're highly educated. We're capable, and you can't bring this on us. So in the chaos of fleeing from the country and the devastation that the women are already seeing, those who are left behind, there's really no hope right now.
Of course, Taliban leadership is, getting behind microphones and talking about amnesty and respecting human rights and women's rights. But all of this is couched through Sharia law, of course. Mm-hmm. So, when you run it through that equation, nothing good is going to come of this.
Not at all. Not at all.
And then in the 90s, correct me if I'm wrong, but when the Taliban came to power, because right now they're saying once security gets better, then you can leave the house. But we recommend for right now, don't. I mean, women still are leaving the house from what I understand in Kabul at least. But they're saying we recommend you to stay home. And apparently that's what happened in the 90s. Like they never gave a strict order. They just said, right now security is not good, so you have to stay at home. And then it gradually got vigilante enforced kind of thing in the 90s. And that's kind of the concern now that it's the same language, actually. It's not any different. It sounds to us, we want to feel, oh, look, they're saying the right things. But in reality, that's exactly what they said in the 90s. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah. There's a creep phenomenon, a social creep phenomenon where initially, although this is Taliban 2.0, much better performed, much better practiced, better language, but already yesterday they killed a journalist. Already there was a women's demonstration and they squashed it massively. They were bleeding on the street and so on and so forth. And the other thing is, you go back to the nature of the thing, not to get philosophical, like, the thing in itself, but the nature of the thing is around women. If you think about the laws that they're talking about, majority of it is women-feared, women-centered. It's kind of funny, isn't it? Mm-hmm. That an entire system is based on how do we shroud women? Like, they think women are so powerful, and it's the sexuality, right? Mm. That the entire... So women can't go to school or past the 6th grade. Now they say past 6th grade. But in reality, it's going to be retracted further. They can't be in public. And if they are in public, they have to be completely shrouded. And so what kind of a system is this? What benefit is it that you're actually hiding a proportion of population? That nature... and the core of that nature, which is fear of that thing that disturbs you. And then human beings, we talked about frail human nature, male's ego.
Yeah.
All of us have some of that.
Yeah.
It's so frail there that nature can't change. It will collapse back to that fear.
It's so interesting and ironic because you have this kind of Taliban archetype, which is very alpha male, but obviously so fragile that they can't possibly see an unshrouded woman and be held to account for their behavior. Yeah. So either the male ego is that fragile, or these women are so all powerful that they must be hidden from us because we can't be expected to control ourselves.
Well, we know what the answer is. Yeah. We're writing a behavior book. The core of human behavior is the sympathetic autonomic system, fight or flight. If you take out the frontal lobe, if you take out to the basic limbic system. It's that fight or flight, the anxiety component of it that raises the heartbeat. And that component then manifests in anything that quickly and rapidly controls it. Now, complexity is what humanity needs. Complexity is tough. Oh, I have this feeling, but then, all the different variables. All of it comes back to slipping back to the basic human nature, which is, this is making me nervous, although we call it different things. It must be bad. Therefore, it must be eliminated. Literally, that's the core of human nature.
And I can point to this ancient text that will legitimize and rationalize the worst of behavior.
Yeah.
Who you don't know who translated, and who knows how that whole thing happened, right? So, but I just want to, so we're clear, I'm sure the listeners know a lot of this, but I just wanted to kind of elucidate what we're talking about when we're talking about misogyny and at least in Afghanistan. This is based on a New York Times article that just published about how safe houses are closing, beginning, with the Taliban coming through. Safe houses for women victims of domestic violence are already closing. Apparently, 50% of Afghan women reported physical abuse, 17% sexual violence, 60% in forced marriages, as opposed to arranged marriages. These are actually forced marriages. There's an issue of kidnapping women as a way to get back at a family as a dishonorable. There's honor killings of your own daughters or sisters or whatever because of that same idea of, I guess promiscuity or just even just a romance outside of an arrangement. All this is harassment of women in the workplace, that kind of thing. The Taliban were releasing prisoners that maybe had been put away for domestic violence, and then there was concern about retribution. This is all this kind of,
because those prisoners have been released,
ongoing right now. And watching the great movie that we both watched, How to Learn to Skateboard in a War Zone if you're a girl. Great film about Skatistan. I was wondering, because you talked about social jiu-jitsu. And so some of this stuff, though, predates Taliban, right? Not all of it. So the Taliban was able to rise because there was already some of this was already in the culture. How can you kind of parse that? Like, for people who are unfamiliar with Afghanistan, why is this an environment that is tolerant of this kind of behavior?
So education is a big thing. And the combination of education and opportunity opens up the mind. Lack of education is fear. I don't mean just academic education, knowledge. Lack thereof creates fear, and lack of opportunity collapses into the lowest denominator of interpretation, especially if you're the only thing you have as means of interpreting something, right? I'm not going to get into too much of that because there will be a fatwa against me, but we'll go with that.
Or wherever the religion, it goes back to religion instead of some other sort of educational background. Correct?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So we're talking about so the Taliban situation was a little unique. In the end of 1970s, the Russians came to America, and we quickly realized, we got the trap. They fell into the trap.
The Russians went to Afghanistan.
Afghanistan.
Not America.
No, Afghanistan, yeah. That's a different movie. Afghanistan. And so during President Reagan's time, they started saying, okay, what can you do to really trap these people? Create extreme version of an interpretation. So madrasas were created in Pakistan, where the most extreme version of Islam or interpretation was promulgated, and these young men would be brought in and would be just raised under these conditions. And in that interpretation, it's if you die for the cause, you go to heaven, and if you kill for the cause, you go to heaven. Whoa, that's a win-win. I mean, what? Yeah. So thousands and thousands were trained, and that worked.
In the 70s in Pakistan.
Yeah, and then in the 80s, late 70s, and in the 80s, that's when the Russians were just demolished. Because you can't defeat a force that doesn't fear death.
Right.
So you had thousands of people just putting bombs on themselves and putting on the tanks, and tanks would blow up. So the Russians were defeated. But, okay, so you created this incredible force, incredibly scary force, and it's done with. But some people thought that it was useful still. We're going to leave that side because a lot of people found that useful. And that scary force was continued. And now we're seeing that scary force. The madrasas continued in Pakistan. They're continuing to train these young men.
Still today.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, by the thousands. In fact, and we see the product here in the United States, in Afghanistan, where they're coming in and they don't know anything. Most of them are illiterate.
Yeah.
All they know that if I kill, I go to heaven. And if I die, I go to heaven. So the only thing between those two is war. And that's a scary force. And oh, by the way, as far as edicts are concerned, one edict, pray and women should be subjugated. Well,
and these are their leaders. It's not just, you're not talking about, some of the soldiers. These are their leaders who think that way. If you look at some of their interviews, which are not really posted on, social media or anywhere else for that matter, but there are some local journalists who speak to these leaders. And when you listen to them for a protracted amount of time where all the filters tend to go away
Once
and that facade that they put of their peacefulness, when that goes away, you see the core true nature of their goals. And most of them have been raised in these madrasas. They've never been exposed to any kind of education. They've never had internet. They don't know what the world looks like or what exists in the world. They have no concept of democracy and justice. And their whole aim is to essentially shroud women and implement Sharia law. That's it. And these are the leaders. And that's the scariest thing. I was looking at an interview where this man, he's I think the second person in the leadership right now. He's probably in his 20s, and he was talking about women's rights. He said, well, we believe that women should have rights. Women are our mothers. They're the representation of the society. And then suddenly you could see that, these statements, I think he kind of ran out of words that were told to him to say, and they just flipped into something like, well, they have to be they have to be covered because that's the rule, that's the law. And I was telling Dean, they brought up an example. So this is the analogy that he used. He said, well, if you go to a farmer's market and you see melons, right? There's a split melon and then there's a whole covered melon. Would you buy the covered melon or would you buy the split melon? The split melon has a lot of germs on it and there's a lot of bugs on it. That's not sweet. That's not sweet enough for the husband. The shrouded melon is the one that you would go and buy one.
Amazing.
So he basically gave an example of how women should be by just giving an example of melon.
Person in the leadership.
The scariest conversation I've ever heard in my life. That's how they think.
Yeah. Despite that, we have this, U.S. occupation, and with that, a creep of kind of urban progressive ways of life that starts to infiltrate the culture on some level. But Afghanistan historically being this nation of survivors that have defied empires for millennia, my sense is that most people are going to, sort of behave in a manner that is survivor expedient for them. And when you have U.S. troops there who can say, well, I don't know how long I'm going to be here, but you have to pledge allegiance to us, and knowing that, next week the Taliban's going to come and place the same demands on these people are going to do what they need to do to survive. And so it's hard to get a gauge on the temperature, if you do a temperature check on like where people's values are and what they aspire to do, what they aspire to in their own lives, it seems murky in terms of trying to really understand like the culture, because there is no monoculture.
No,
Right.
no. It's such an accurate statement in the sense that the expression, even the people in themselves are in such turmoil right now that not only is their language mercurial and capricious and floating and amoebic, but even their values are that. And it's not a judgment of them. It is
survival.
It's survival. I mean, none of us have experienced that. I mean, what's the worst thing I experienced in Redondo Beach? I mean, I mean, I don't even, sometimes these young people drive really fast across in front of my house. I mean, that's
Probably
really
that's the biggest one, yeah.
Yeah. But to know, like, when I went there, these families said that right before you guys came during Taliban, there were rockets being fired every day, and every family member had a person that had been killed during the war. Every single family member killed. We don't have any idea of that. So you're right. It's survival now, and it's at the pace of the vacuum. And the vacuum is the thing, right? The vacuum that's left behind. So we've started this organization called Restore Her Hope.
Restore Her Voice.
Voice. I keep coming back to hope for some reason.
That's
Yeah,
because
I'm
we're looking for hope.
I'm looking for Restore Her Voice. Because we said, where can we help? Where can we help? Not just in Afghanistan, because we're women's rights and justice and all that. And it's going to be broader. It's not going to be us going there and saving people. My goodness. I couldn't even do some push-ups, as you heard. I'm not a warrior. I'm a scientist. What's the most effective, and this is important, what's the most effective unit of a society? And we have 3 men here, and 4, and 1 woman here. The most effective unit of productivity in a society are the women. $1 spent in healthcare and on women is at the minimum 4 times more effective than anything else. And the same is true across all spectrums. And when you give women voice, especially if they've been empowered already, that becomes the most powerful force in the society, positive force. And in the United States or other places, when you take women's rights away, when you take their voices away, it becomes the nidus of the most destructive cycle. In fact, I think that's the beginning of a fall. So that's why we thought that giving women their voices back, both Afghan or otherwise, especially post-traumatic, is I think the most effective thing we could do.
So what do you do? What's the organization do, like specifically?
So our goal is to highlight and promote women who have lived in Afghanistan, who have been through the trauma, for them to be the voice and for them to be the platform for all women living in Afghanistan and any other country. I think the stories that they tell, the kind of perspective that they give us is invaluable because it really touches the true core of who we are as a society and as human beings. And we want to provide them not necessarily just the same platform they had, all these brave and courageous women who fled the country, the same platform here in the United States, but to help them get to the right people, the right groups, the right organizations to be able to promote this message that women's right is human's right, and they need to be at the same seat, if not at a higher seat, of making decisions for themselves and for this world. We have incredible politicians, YouTubers, artists, scientists who have been forced out of the country. And so we're trying to welcome them. We're trying to give them some stable ground and let them speak for the country.
So a platform for these various women of different backgrounds.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Like this diaspora
Yes.
of women.
Yeah.
Where are some of these women who have gotten out? Where are they settling, or are they just spread out all over the place? Like, what is the kind of refugee landscape look like?
They've been spread out.
Yeah, it's
so
a little
far.
chaotic right now. A lot of the women we were talking about, and we've identified a few of them, are in Washington, D.C., and some of them are actually in Los Angeles and area as well. What happened was a huge number of people were brought out to Qatar and other places, and Germany,
right.
and then from there to U.S. and other places. And in U.S., they're kept in big spaces in Washington and Dallas and other places. But the women that we're talking about, they were leaders of their fields. For example, there's a woman that was the head of the orchestra and actually played in Kennedy Center, right?
Yes.
So she's in the United States. We're hoping to kind of give her the platform to not just get to where she was before, but also speak about that. I really think the most important thing as human beings we can do is speak. Speak fearlessly, speak often, speak with errors, make mistakes, but speak, and speak the truth without any abatement. Nobody's telling us not to say certain things. And out of that, that's a paraphenomenon of evolution that sped up evolution a billion times, our ability to speak fearlessly. And if these women who have the power, who have the tools, who've lived those experiences, I think there will be a megaphone for the cause.
Yeah.
And it also highlights how similar we are. When we speak, we realize that all those artificial differences, whether it's language or the way we dress or the way we speak or we carry ourselves, it just falls. One of the things that we are trying to do is to make every American living here in the United States and around the world, for them to feel that these women are them. They are you. They're the neighbor that you have. They're your mom. They're like your sister. They're like your daughter. They're like your friend. They're no different. And if we can shorten the distance between those differences and engage in conversations with them, I think we can all work towards a better world. We can be better versions of ourselves.
Adam mentioned the short documentary "Learning to Skateboard" in a what's it called? In a war zone.
If you're a girl.
Yeah, which I believe won the Oscar.
I think
in
so,
2019.
for a short
I watched it
documentary.
this morning and I was literally weeping.
Oh yeah.
Because to watch that movie now, in the context of what's transpired over the last couple of weeks, it's so heart-wrenching. And you can't help but think, where are these young women now and what are they doing? And is there any possibility or hope for getting people out of the country at this point? I mean, we all bore witness to what transpired at the airport. But with the Taliban kind of stranglehold on the country at the moment, there doesn't seem to be an opportunity.
Unfortunately not. No, we're seeing this diminishing of the efforts at this point, and trying not to lose hope. And it's difficult not to lose hope at this point, to be honest.
To make it our field, neurology. So we're a big signal detecting device, right? Our brain. We don't get out of our comfort unless something happens that gets us out of comfort. Right. So, and for millions of years, it was because we had to distinguish between a bush and a lion. Now it's a little more complex, human behavior, social aspects. I think these opportunities, and I don't want to make it sound, diminish what we just talked about, 16 million people dying, basically. And we should address that. I think this is an opportunity for us to have more complex conversations about humanity in general, women and women's rights, and what we consider success. Again, we repeat, what we did in Afghanistan, incidentally, maybe, as a paraphenomenon, maybe, it doesn't matter. The consequence was the most successful thing we've ever done. If we consider success the degree of change, or delta, as they say in science, the delta of it, the delta was just absolutely bewildering. And if that's not success, then your value system is based on an antiquated system. You better reassess your values. Even though you're wearing the nice clothes and the tie and everything, you're in the wrong place psychologically. We did succeed. And then we failed it because we didn't know that this was success. And why didn't we know that? And it's not about Afghanistan. We believe in throughout the world. I mean, we've traveled 50 countries or more. And I think if we reframe the situation to speak about that our success is just this. Women's rights, which will create connectivity, and women's leadership, feminine leadership, which is more about, we talk about leadership, and my background, leadership is all feminine. The part that's masculine, which is the muscle, it's just a couple of people, but it's feminine, and it's about conversation, communication, connecting. And if we increase that quanta, in the world will be a better place. If we reframe our successes around that concept, we will be a better society. We will not let that destructive seed regrow in our own country, and it will regrow in our own country.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're seeing aspects of that now.
I'll let you do that.
With what's going on in Texas at the moment. But yeah, I mean, I think that it's a very good point in that we don't identify the successes in Afghanistan because that is not our priority. We define success by whether or not we could create a thriving democracy and a stable police force and military that could protect the border and instill democratic values across the country. We failed at that. There's this other huge success here, but because of our sort of cultural priorities, we don't consider that a success.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you brought it back to nationalism. I mean, America's had, nationalism is, like Pledge of Allegiance, the Star Spangled Banner, and for the ball games, the American flags you see everywhere. I'm not denigrating any of that. It's just a part of the culture. So when that's a part of the culture, and then you see servicemen dying over there, and it seems far away. And like what you're suggesting is a complete paradigm shift in global culture,
Well, and these people are different, and they're not like us.
worth aspiring to, but it's just not. Unfortunately, it's just not the majority of the people thinking that way. We should think that way. We should, but globalism has gotten a bad name because it's always thought in economic terms.
Yeah.
This also is benefit economically when you can lift, like you said, and lift the women up economically. It lifts the entire country up economically. But just I think that not to say it shouldn't happen. It's just probably the explanation for why it's not happening.
There's a concept of American imperative, which was there's a little bit of a scary side of it in the 1800s, and like almost like as if it was meant that we should conquer and all that.
Right.
But let's flip that. Let's jiu-jitsu. Let's do the little jiu-jitsu there. What if the American imperative is a new kind of empire that prospers, that grows, but also changes societies for the. We keep using the word democracy as if it's a thing. There are different ways of that democracy. And in fact, in Afghanistan was pretty. We had more women at one point in the parliament in Afghanistan than we did in U.S. Congress, because by law it was in the doctrine that they had to have 33% or 1/3 women. So they were there. They were active. They were outspoken. They would tell. I actually have seen one of the women actually shut up. Turn to a very, very powerful warlord and shut him down. So that was a great success. So not to kind of get too much into that, but the success that we had in Afghanistan is, I think, should be addressed. And I think one of the first places that we've seen is here. We're doing it because I think it's a great learning for all of us as a society, as a nation, as a great nation, as a new empire. If you don't like the word empire, a great nation, large nation, who can do great things, but at the human level, and it was done. It was done, and it was lost.
Yeah. We don't seem to value that kind of soft analysis, though. It's really those kind of tactile benchmarks that we're judging our progress by. And in the meantime, I think we've lost our footing as a nation that was known to kind of take the moral high ground in situations like this. But I'm interested in, you guys are neurologists and you think a lot about the brain. How do we help us understand the mind of the Taliban? What is going on neurologically with such an individual that they hold a worldview that they do and conduct themselves in a manner that seems so retrograde and foreign to Westerners?
I'm going to take it, and then you'll take it from there.
We could talk for days about this.
Yeah. It's actually easier than people think. If anybody has a teenage son who has that's a redundant sexual urges. That teenage son, that's a redundant thing. So it's a teenage son that doesn't know much, not very educated, and its entire world purview is condensed to one little set of values that it's learned repeatedly over and over again. And then it's told that it should actually control all urges. That's the Taliban. That's it. I mean, the core neurology of that is base human instincts and a set of edicts to control those base human.
Well, in the effort to control those urges and instincts, there's going to be some errant sideways behavior.
Yeah. The women are the scariest thing to them, right? I mean, the women are the things that I mean. I remember going to Afghanistan and talking to some of these back Taliban, and it would be interesting that every other conversation would be about some edict around women's issues, because it's the emotion that disturbed them the most. So that's the emotion that must be subdued the most. That's very simple. Humanity is less complex than we think we are. It starts with those core sympathetic and parasympathetic systems that goes to the limbic emotional brain that interprets things in the most survival-based way, which means more control. Eliminate any possibility of danger by reducing the number of variables, which means, and that's basically the human nature when it's not allowed to flourish.
And everything starts from a fear stance. So everything is based on fear. Fear of the other, fear of the different, fear of something that will take away things from you. I think people start becoming more nuanced when the fear goes away. Yes, that could be a luxury. If you're secure, if you're not hungry, if you're not under attack, you probably don't have enough fear and you can explore things. But if you exist in a fearful environment, which they've been told as children that someone will kill you, someone will attack you. The other person who doesn't look like you is different. So you have to stay away from that. And the fear of women, the fear of your urges, your base urges, everything is based on that. And that's why sticking to a set of rules and regulations and coming back to that over and over again is a reflex. And that fear is solidified over many, many years so much that it's impossible for anything outside to be introduced. That's why I think it's some people say that they may be open to conversations or they may be open to change. They won't. There's no hope for that.
This comes down. I mean, it's not like there are parallels to the United States. Like if you're not able to have a sexual release, there will be violence. If you can't get laid, you will kill. And we have incel, involuntary celibate men here who bring the guns and shoot people at schools or on the streets. I mean, that happens here.
Right.
Yeah.
In Texas, we have a set of laws that are making it harder to vote and women and are controlling women's bodies without their consent. That's happening here. It's like those dominoes are here.
Yeah.
So that's an extreme case of something that is, I guess, universal, but it's happening here probably more than a lot of places as well. So I find that interesting. I think there's also an economic element to this, right? I mean, it's not.
Sure.
I was just doing some research and looking at ISIS-K and how that started in Afghanistan in 2015, and they were paying people $700 a month to come join ISIS. And that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And it's not that dissimilar to stuff I've seen in cartel countries in Nicaragua and Mexico, where all of a sudden ISIS, like these cartels, are paying for the health care.
Yeah, they make
paying
sure
for
that the payroll is met,
and
whereas the American forces, the checks are bouncing and, you couldn't count on that.
Yeah.
And then I assume the Taliban are paying for fighters too. So there is an economic element of it, right?
Sure, yeah.
And so it's not, there is that, like people are going to where the paycheck is.
There's two elements to that. You're absolutely right. There's a measure of support for these people, right?
Yeah.
Where's that coming from?
Yeah.
So the measure of support is coming from, it's a carrot and stick kind of thing. The element that there's a huge percentage of the population that were not happy with the government as it was because there was corruption. And corruption came in Afghanistan because a country that was hungry, had nothing, all of a sudden you brought in warlords to run the government. And I know that's controversial, but it is true. I mean, they know themselves. And some of them were good, some of them were not, but there was a lot of corruption. I mean, we're talking in the billions. We know that the Central Bank of Afghanistan, $900 million was just usurped and taken away. And they found who it was. They didn't do anything about it because the president's brother was involved in it. So they didn't do anything.
Right.
And then the commanders were involved in it, so they didn't do anything. So what people were getting frustrated, their life is not getting better, but certain other people in the community or society are getting, so a lot of frustration with corruption. That's one element. So my life is not going to change too much. Yeah, for the men especially. For the men, life is not going to change too much. If I was poor, I'm going to be poor. Now you have a force that's dark. It's not going to affect me. Maybe my wife, maybe that's good for me, and my daughter. But at least they're going to control corruption, and they did. The other element is money that's coming from the Taliban is from outside countries and from poppy. Number one source of opium and all that. It's Afghanistan. They have that system better regulated than the government had their systems regulated.
Right.
And like you said, people were getting paid on time as opposed to the government. So both of those issues are economic. You're absolutely right. And then economy has a big factor.
The answer to all your questions is money, right? Like that's what it comes down to.
In a way, yeah. Money and education.
Yeah.
Money and hoping that education gets people's fears away. But that's not always guaranteed.
But there's also this asymmetry when you have religious fundamentalists, zealots who are fighting a religious war versus Western troops who are there because they've been deployed there and are trying to win hearts and minds in a situation that is at best an extremely uphill battle. So it's lined up for a loss right out of the gate.
It seems like it was from the beginning. The thing to do would have been to chase the Taliban into Pakistan, and they just couldn't do it because of borders and politics, and they just were unwilling to do it until Obama finally said we're going to get Osama bin Laden. But that allowed a safe haven, right, for them to kind of regain and get financing. And then there's also Iran has what? According to this Frontline report I saw today, 5,000 to 10,000 people in Afghanistan are aligned with Iran in this quest to maybe create a Hezbollah type situation if the Taliban fails quickly. We're looking at a possible civil war.
Not
here,
a
right?
possible. It's going to happen, and it's going to get radical, because when you create a vacuum, and there are elements of vacuum where different crystals can manifest, they will manifest. They will manifest, and there will be radical manifestation because of anger, lack of economy, and lack of education. It will be so, and I think people in power know this. Well, not to make it too political, throughout history, Afghanistan's instability has been used as a weapon for the neighbor's stability. Mm-hmm. So that's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, all of these women, accomplished women, are redonning the burqas, ensconcing themselves in their homes, not going outdoors.
It's going to be
It's a
terrible.
return to a Stone Age existence.
Complete
It
stone.
already has.
Yeah.
It already has, and that is the saddest thing that we're seeing right now.
And I tell you, I don't see them being defeated back at this point because of the partnerships of the neighbors. Like China already moved in with some deals, I think, because of Afghanistan has a lot of resources. They say up to $3 trillion in minerals, not just lithium, but across the board, even uranium and everything else. So China is moving in, Pakistan, Iran, and then our calmest neighbor right now. That's the calmest neighbor,
right?
Russia. Imagine that's your calmest neighbor.
Yeah.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Your calmest neighbor is Putin.
Yeah. He's just taking it easy right now. Yeah.
Can I shout out some of these names that we had bolded here? Some women, accomplished women, maybe I'll just read them off and some of their accomplishments, and you guys have some thoughts about them. That'd be good. Shukriya Barakzai.
Yes.
She was mentioned in this great article that you sent over that Lindsay Adario wrote, who's currently shooting wildfires in Tahoe. Yes. Incredible photojournalist, as we all know. She went from getting beaten in the street by the Taliban during the 90s to once the Taliban were gone, helping to draft the Constitution and serve 2 terms in Parliament. I
worked with her.
Yeah.
I knew her. I actually was in many conversations with her. Amazing human being. Just powerhouse of a human being. Yeah.
Is she still there?
She is. Yeah.
Fazia Kufi.
Yeah. Fazia Kufi.
Fazia Kufi poured her life into the country since the Taliban came to power in 96. She started a network of secret girls' schools in the 90s in her home province called Badakhshan. Is that right? And member of parliament from 2005 to 2019, and was one of the people representing Afghanistan, the Republic, in peace negotiations with the Taliban, and is now finds herself out of the country and kind of trying to figure out what's next, correct?
Powerful woman, outspoken. She still is. She actually is one of the most outspoken Afghan women on Twitter. And she didn't want to get out. She actually promised that she was going to stay back and fight, but when they threatened her, because these Taliban go from home to home looking for these strong, powerful women who were part of the government, and so she had to flee with 2 daughters in Qatar. But she vows to be connected and as loud as she can.
Yeah, her daughters got out in advance of her, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Mahbouba Siraj, who I hadn't heard of, who is
One of our favorite people.
I saw her on the CNN. I think was it some clip, and it was she's from the Afghan Women's Network. She's staying.
Yeah.
She says, "I'm going outside, no matter what," right. And is hoping to work together, right? With she's saying that in good faith, hoping to try to figure out a way to run the country in a positive direction.
Yeah.
She's always been an ultimate optimist.
Yeah.
And an outspoken woman. Absolutely love her. I hope she's safe.
And Pashtana Durrani, a young woman, she's 23 years old, executive director of an organization called Learn. She's in hiding right now, trying to organize girls' schools on the digital platform.
Yeah.
Pashtana is a great example of what happens when there's opportunity. She's in her 20s, so she is the latest generation of Afghan women who had the opportunity to educate herself and help others, and she's done a phenomenal job. But she's in grave danger because they've threatened her. She's created multiple schools. She actually has a very strong social media presence, and she's actively speaking against the Taliban right now.
What is the social media situation in Afghanistan? I mean, do they have Twitter and people tweet, and like what happens with somebody who says the wrong thing?
It's ending.
Yeah.
I mean, there were YouTubers who have completely stopped posting their videos. There were there's this one a very popular show, a bowling show of a young lady who is now in the United States. She used to invite politicians and people in the position of power to come bowl, and during that bowling session, she would actually challenge their politics and their
That's a great idea.
notions.
What a great
So
that's a great YouTube show.
It's like Hot Ones.
So
then there's this guy, Rustam Wahab, on Instagram, who's been doing some really interesting reporting, young guy.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we're hearing from the Taliban is like, oh yes, we're going to ensure an open media ecosystem. But he shared a video clip of like a television news host with two. Yeah. He's like in a tie and he's reporting the news, and there's two Taliban standing behind him with their rifles.
That was supposed to be a debate, by the way.
Right.
Yeah, that's going to be a great debate with two Kalashnikovs behind
I like that. That's like the old world debate.
That's right.
What do you think about that?
Yeah. Whatever you think.
Rustam is only 19. He's one of the youngest.
And where does he live? He's British.
I believe he's in the UK. Yes.
Yeah.
He just and he's been posting clips that are filmed by individuals and journalists in Afghanistan. So things that are not really posted out in the media that often.
I am in love with this young woman, Shamsia Hassani, the first Afghan female graffiti street artist. Her Instagram is incredible.
Yeah.
The stuff that she's doing.
And she's still there, I think.
Yeah. But she's kind of gone underground, it appears.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of them have.
We have put together a list of articles and a list of these Instagram accounts, and in addition, documentaries like the one we mentioned before, and plenty of other books and resources that we'll put in the show notes for people that want to dive deeper into everything that we've been talking about today.
There was like the Tom Morello story that you liked, right?
Oh, yeah, I like that one.
Guitarist with Rage Against the Machine was promoting this guitar school that was also kind of like Skateistan, but with music, a place for girls to get educated as well as learn guitar. And like a rock producer had kind of relocated to Kabul and started to teach guitar, just one girl at a time, and it created this whole thing. And before, I just wanted to ask one last question, because we kind of skated over this, and you had said it at the opening, Ayesha, that and I've spent time on Mae-Sot, Thailand, and a lot of time in Burma, and so I understand the idea, where I haven't been in an active war zone quite like that, but there were still, it displaced people and minefields and that kind of stuff not too far away, and I spent some time in there. But what was interesting was that two parallels. One is medics, training villagers as medics was a key towards development. And the other thing was this landscape of international people coming from all over the world, aid money, and a network of people all there for a purpose, and that's to help people. And then romance, and you guys met in that kind of a scenario.
Yeah.
What was it like in those heady days in those early, 2002, 2003,
Right.
2004, like where it's like, who's there? Like, what's like, where are you going out to dinner? Like all that kind of stuff.
Oh gosh.
It was I'll give my version, then you can give your version.
Okay.
My version is better. No. So as I said, we both came from, completely different environments. America, modern, I was
But you have this great, rich family history with Afghanistan.
We do.
though.
I mean,
Yeah.
my grandfather was the Reform king that was actually thrown out in the 1920s. His Secretary of Education was my grandfather. So even our pride and joy is the fact that he was the Secretary of Education that brought women's reform, that brought education into the country. And my grandfather was friends with her grandfather,
Yeah.
who came back to the United
know
States.
that.
Yeah, they were very good
It's
friends.
like a movie.
Yeah, they came back to the United States. He came back to the United States, went to Columbia University, medical school surgery, and then went to Hopkins to become public health expert. Went back to Afghanistan and created I'm not going to...
No.
Parliament.
was
he
part of
wrote
the
first
Constitution,
Constitution. Brilliant man. And then my grandfather, same thing. And of course, when you do good things there, my grandfather was kicked out early. So his sons came to the United States in the 50s. They're doctors here, surgeons. We stayed, my parents stayed. In the 1970s, the communists came, and immediately everybody ran to America, and we were not very smart. We went to Pittsburgh. But no offense to Pittsburgh. I love Pittsburgh. It's my home. But we grew up there, but when was involved in the community, not as much as I thought, but public health, yes. I was asked to go back to Afghanistan to help reconstruct. And at the time I was at NIH, they said just 3 months hiatus. Went back, became 3 years. But in the first year, in a party, expat party. Expats are these internationals that come together, and the party's there because you're in a war zone. It's a horrible situation. Everything is abated. Alcohol, everything. Everybody's just drinking, and I'm sitting talking to some people, and she pulls a chair next to me. That's my version. She sits next to me, and we start talking. And the first conversation is about our grandparents.
Yeah.
And they both had Alzheimer's, and they both died of Alzheimer's and dementia.
Crazy.
thickens.
The plot
And
thickens.
then
Yeah.
we start talking, and then I because I was at the time the deputy minister, I had this white car, this with driver and security. I offered to drive them to their hotel, and I drive her to her hotel with her mom, and then we lose each other.
Yeah.
And I chased them. That's the whole thing. I found her, and then we dated in Afghanistan with our bodyguard. I gotta say this part.
Oh, that is
The Ministry of Interior had given us a bodyguard because I was threatening people by just my beliefs. And the bodyguard was wet, fully dressed, 80 pounds, 90 pounds at most. And he had this line.
Most.
And you know how soldiers have these bullets here? He had a line of marijuana or hashish roll-ups here, right there. I'm like, you're a police officer. You're a cop.
But he actually was a teacher.
He was a teacher.
He
We
was a
called him the
teacher
teacher.
from Badakhshan. And,
yeah.
we used to call him Malam Sahib, which means, dear teacher. And he was forced to work in the army as a bodyguard because he couldn't make enough money. So, he was our chaperone. And when we would go to hotels or to restaurants, to have dinner, he would actually follow us.
Well,
and he
he
would
would-
fall asleep all the
Because
time.
Shaggy from
Yeah.
Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, you're
he was
80
high all the
pound bodyguard with the kind kush.
There were times when Dean had to carry the
I had to
Kalashnikov.
carry the Kalashnikov, the minister
Mom
felt
said,
that we-
let's go. It's time to go home. And he would wake up and just.
So that's
he
how
was
we met.
Although
Well-
he was a beautiful poet too.
Here's the
he wrote
thing.
us a poem.
I don't know how you guys as neurologists feel about free will, whether humans have free will or don't have free will, but this all feels very predestined to me.
It
like the
does.
work that you're doing now and everything that you've done.
No,
It
yeah.
is
When you look back
yeah.
through the generations of your family histories.
I consider myself very lucky, and I think there's a lot of work to do. Us being neurologists and talking about plaques and tangles and Alzheimer's disease and being involved in all the science and putting a halt to that, not necessarily a halt, but refocusing on what is making us strong as human beings. That's one of the reasons. And I think that's a continuation of the stories of our grandfathers and all these amazing human beings, especially women that we met in Afghanistan.
The work we do even now, it's not the esoteric clinical trials and stuff. We are, I think, the only neurologists that work in the communities.
That's right.
We lead one of the largest brain health initiatives in the world.
With a focus on women.
Centered on women. So meaning that we actually take the women in the community, we train them because we know that they're going to have the most impact. And coming back to that, and they're the most successful by far.
Right.
As far as destiny, well, it depends on the searching mind, doesn't it? If you're searching, you meet your destiny. If you're not searching, you meet your destiny. Yeah.
You dodged the free will question with that, though.
I'm a little bit of on Harris's school of free will. Yeah.
Can I ask a question about the neurology? Is because you talked about the resiliency of so many of these women, and especially the women who are given freedom and look what they can do. Yeah. I wonder, as neurologists, if you saw also some of the fallout on the other side, where this kind of being forced to shroud, stay inside, does that contribute to early onset dementia? Do you see some of these neurological issues that present earlier, maybe, if through this environment, or does the survivor in you kind of like take precedence and eliminate that?
That's a good question. I don't think we have hard data on that. The one thing that is quite evident is this prevalence, massive prevalence of anxiety and depression. And it's not the typical anxiety and depression because, sometimes when you're in survivor mode, you don't really have the time to show the manifestation of depression. So, when you're always wondering what your children are going to eat the next day, and when you're always wondering whether you're going to have a shelter tomorrow or not, or whether your loved one is going to be around your dinner table or not, there's no time for you to sit back and, feel bad. There's this massive amount of anxiety that people live with. Yes, there are a lot of deaths because of cardiovascular disease and other manifestations of stress and anxiety. I don't think anybody has actually done work to look at, the neurological manifestations of that. And especially in the last 20 years, with early deaths and people dying of easily preventable diseases, they probably don't even get to that point where the neurodegeneration aspect actually starts kicking in.
Mm-hmm. Just as a continuation of that, I mean, that's a beautiful answer. So I shouldn't, but I'll just give it a little bit. So the human brain, I mean, we're here outside of the intangible answers that why we're here. The tangible is we're here because of as much valued as we have it's our brain, right? Especially our feeling brain. Descartes said, I cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. I say, insoucio ergo sum, I feel, therefore I am. As much as we can feel, that's why the animal thing. That's why, if you don't distill the cause to the base value, which is ability to feel, it's meaningless. So as far as feeling is concerned, yes, we that's the brain. The brain is here to feel. But at the same time, it's also here to explore. Feel fully, and there are levels of it, and explore fully. When the brain is not, and we don't have data in Afghanistan, but outside of Afghanistan, when a brain is not exploring, it shrinks. The moment the brain stops exploring, and exploring could be anything, thinking, reading, playing music, all of this stuff, except for playing Sudoku, which I hate. But all these manifestations of creativity of the mind coming to the fore. And if it's not doing that, it shrinks. It has more consequence than eating bad. And I'm a nutritionist. I have a master's in nutrition. She has a master's. Inability to let the brain be creative destroys the brain. And we have entire 50% of the general population shrouding, not being able to think. You're killing them. Yeah, so, and that's true in America. It's true everywhere. Mm-hmm. So as far as why we're here is to let people's creativity roam. Let it flourish. Don't be scared. We have latitude. I hope that this conversation is not, people recognize, not for Afghanistan only. America. We have to be fearless and out of the creativity of each individual's will to manifest their full potential. Let's not stop shrouding it.
Mm. Yeah, and I think the solutions to these problems, be they in America, Afghanistan, or elsewhere, certainly there are, other conflict zones across the world and genocides and plenty of problems, but finding our way forward begins with empathy, and empathy is about understanding. And I appreciate you guys coming here today to help us understand better so that we can breed the empathy that's required to manifest the solutions. But before we kind of end this, I do want to spend a few moments just talking about the solution. You've got this organization, Restore Her Voice. I know there's a GoFundMe component to that. So if people are listening or watching and they feel the urge or the call to contribute in a meaningful way, like what is the best outlet for time and resources?
Well, I'm grateful to you for allowing us to use your platform to spread this message. I think if one of the best things that people can help with is to be the voice of these women who have been silenced by the dark, antiquated, and ignorant forces in Afghanistan. And for us to help rebuild the same kind of situation that they had in the past 20 years, for them to speak up. I think these women coming from Afghanistan to the United States are the best representatives of the harsh environment there and of the beautiful potential that women have there. And so if they want to help us, we would be grateful to them. We've already raised a whole lot, with the help of these kind, amazing individuals, more than $100,000 over the last couple of weeks. And we're going to use all of these resources to help these women establish themselves and reach their potential and be a representation of the women in Afghanistan.
And people can go to the website, Restore Her Voice?
RestoreHerVoice.org. That's the website, and we're on social media as well, Restore Her Voice.
What say you, Adam Skolnick?
I'm just grateful to be a part of this conversation and to have met you both, and to you, Rich, for scheduling it so I could be here. And it's just, this is kind of stuff that makes you want to be a journalist and be a writer, is to explore these stories and try to contribute in some small way to a huge problem. And so I appreciate being a part of it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I think that we mentioned Skatistan earlier, but we didn't really explain it. So if these issues are brand new to you, listener, viewer, maybe start with that documentary, because it's a really beautiful portrait of an effort at a grassroots level to empower young girls in a very heartwarming way by creating this school that is kind of behind tall walls and hidden, wherein they teach young girls how to skateboard. And they've got a skate ramp, but they use it also as a platform for empowerment by teaching them like the soft skills so that they can value themselves. And it's really quite beautiful. And it's
really
like 40 minutes long or something like that.
It's a beautiful, beautiful documentary.
And then I found Electric Literature is a good website in the literary world. And Nadia Hashimi, a writer who's in the Afghan diaspora, she put together a list of books by or about Afghan women. So I think you're going to link to that as well, correct?
Oh, right. 8 books by and about Afghan women. Right.
So we'll put that in the show notes.
Amazing.
Yeah, cool.
So people can kind of get into that, and like some of these, like that documentary of the 1950s in Afghanistan, and to see how it was trending and where it is now, it just shows you how fragile it really is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. I mean, it was so progressive. It had developed so much that nobody would have envisioned that it would collapse. Not only did it collapse twice. Progress is fragile.
And I think it's an important reminder that we not take for granted our liberties and our freedoms, and to be more vigilant about, what is right and correct and fair and equitable.
But also, like, not to have such hard, like, I think when you get to a point where there's such hard polarization and hard boundaries between left and right, or up, whatever it is, red and blue, you actually are contributing to a potential of a fall. Whereas if there's much more free flow of ideas and receptivity, I think you have a better chance. If there's hard walls and obstacles between, and that's going to impede intellectual growth, I think. And
but that's what we're seeing
beautifully
right
stated,
now,
yeah.
In the United States, a calcification of ideologies that's making conversation and communication more and more difficult. And that is exacerbating the polarization and I think the problems that, we're contending with right now.
Yeah.
And the result is something like in Texas that should have been nipped in the bud with better organizing and communication, right? Like you think, right? So that, yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Rich.
How do you feel? Feel good?
Feels amazing.
Did we do it?
Oh
Yes,
my God.
absolutely.
All right.
We love you.
I love you guys so
the
much.
fact that,
Thank you.
You're doing. This is not fulsome flattery. I'm an honorary guy. You're doing the most important thing: having the courageous conversations.
Trying to do it.
No,
Trying
it
to
is.
do it.
It is absolutely
And these
true.
guys have this idea,
know.
like this concept of the last 20 years in Afghanistan that just completely flips it on its head and just like it seems so obvious after reading that email.
Yeah.
Wow, this was a success, but before that, it wasn't even in my mind.
Yeah.
And so I think it's brilliant. I mean, that's like to have this kind of counterintuitive notion put out there. I think is super important.
I think we should all take pride in that. And unfortunately, that's not the narrative that you see every day. So thank you for this opportunity to actually talk about that.
Thank you. And thank you for the wonderful gift, this
Yeah.
book, this Steve McCurry book, which is quite a work of art.
It really
Appreciate
is.
it. It
really is, of course.
It will hold a proud spot here in the studio. So
It
thanks.
belongs here.
And
Belongs
you guys
here.
are welcome here anytime.
Thank you, Rich.
Appreciate
Thank you
it.
so
You're
much.
always
All
so
right.
kind. Thank you. It was so
Nice
nice meeting
meeting
you.
you.
Hey, thank you.
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Namaste.